Canto 1, Chapter 11, Text 7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhavayanastvam Bhava Vishwabhavana. Tvameva Matata Suhartapati Pita. Tvam Sadguruna Paramam Cha Daivatam. Yasyānuvritya Kirtano Babhuvima. That's Srimad Bhagavatam 1:11:7, and the translation. O Creator of the universe, you are a mother, well-wisher, Lord, Father, spiritual master, and worshipable deity. By following in your footsteps, we become successful in every respect. We pray, therefore, that you continue to bless us with your mercy. Purport: the all-good personality of Godhead, being the creator of the universe, also plans for the good of all good living beings. The good living beings are advised by the Lord to follow his good advice, and by doing so, they become successful in all spheres of life. There is no need to worship any deity but the Lord. The Lord is all-powerful, and if he is satisfied by our obedience unto his lotus feet, he is competent to bestow upon us all kinds of blessings for the successful execution of both our material and spiritual lives. For attaining spiritual existence, the human form is a chance for all to understand our eternal relation with God. Our relation with him is eternal. It can neither be broken nor vanquished. It may be forgotten for the time being, but it can be revived also by the grace of the Lord, if we follow his injunctions, which are revealed in the scriptures of all times and all places. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. A very good morning to you all, and also a very happy new year to you all. A very happy new year that's filled with happiness, with good health, and most importantly with Krishna consciousness. May the Lord bless you all with spiritual progress than ever before. And this is also a year for us to stand together, to come together as devotees, so that we can hold our hands even tighter as we make progress on our spiritual journey. So I wish you a very, very happy and a Krishna conscious year 2021. So today's verse, we will be continuing our discussion in terms of Krishna's entry into Dwaraka and how the people, the denizens, the residents of Dwaraka are welcoming him, or have welcomed him after his return from Hastinapur, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, and all the various accomplishments that the Lord accomplished. Was successful in over the last the previous several months, and so the residents of Dwaraka were missing him completely. Right, there was no question about that. So these verses that we're covering over the last few days and for the next few days as well will be talking about how the residents are contemplating how they're receiving the Lord and how much they've really missed Him, and so they're expressing their hearts as we are exposed through these beautiful verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I will be covering a few key terms here, especially considering this is a very packed um, verse by itself, like most of the other verses are within the Srimad Bhagavatam. Especially, in this chapter, there are several verses which are extremely deep, very profound, and also require a lot of discussion. I can do only so much justice with the extent to my own personal realization, and so I once again am praying for the blessings of all the Vaishnavas in and out of this call to help me through this so that we can share, so that I can share my understanding as well as also get some understanding from you as we get through this discussion. So one of the initial backdrops that I'd like to set up when I was reading this verse that came to my mind is the contemplation on the arrival of Srila Prabhupada um, when he first came to the United States of America back in 1965. His prayers when he landed, I'll read them out to you, but I would like for you to just spend a moment to contemplate and think, put yourself in his shoes. I know those are very, very, very tall shoes, but just for a moment, let's just put ourselves, on the docks of Boston Harbor and put ourselves in Srila Prabhupada's shoes, or at least close to his shoes, to understand what his thoughts were and what he was going through at that point in time. His prayers were, "Oh Lord, I'm just like a puppet in your hands. So if you brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance. Oh Lord, make me dance as you like. I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna." So after a 35-day journey from Calcutta, the Jaladuta reached Boston's Commonwealth Pier at 5:30 a.m. on September 17th, 1965. Along the way, Prabhupada suffered multiple heart attacks. He endured the harsh conditions of the journey that brought him across, the seven seas to the United States. But his journey started way before that as well, where he was trying to fulfill on his spiritual master's instructions that he should take the message of Krishna to the West. And it wasn't an easy journey. Even, in terms of being able to scheme and plan and actually make this whole journey possible, he had to go through a lot. First of all, he was, trying to sell some books, the books that he had written, so that through those sales he could at least get some money so that he could make his voyage to the West. But even that had become extremely difficult because a lot of the stores, the bookstores, were not willing to carry the books because there were no sales. People, even then, as you know, in Kali Yuga, there is very, very little importance given to religion. So who's interested in buying books of religion? Even if you were to give it for free, people these days shy away, shut their doors in our faces. So Prabhupada went through a lot of strife in terms of being proactive, in terms of being able to make that happen. And he would constantly go from Calcutta to Delhi and other places so that he could actually make this happen. But he was really dealing with an uphill task. So long story short, I finally managed to approach Mrs. Murarji, who is the head of Shindia Shipping Company, and through her, He was able to convince her finally after multiple meetings, because she was not convinced that at his age he should be going to a foreign country and then not knowing the culture there, not being able to deal with the weather and the climate out there, to see if he would even survive beyond the 1 month. And even getting the sponsorship to get there itself was a huge challenge for Prabhupada, which through one Mr. Agarwal's son, who is an engineer here in Pennsylvania, was able to get him, the sponsorship letter, through which he was able to use that as one of the documents, one of the many documents that was required at that time to obtain the visa. And having obtained the visa after great difficulty, because sannyasis in those days were not given visas that easily, because the foreign countries obviously did not want foreigners to come into their country and become a burden to the country. So he had to prove that he was free from debt and that he could, actually have enough funds here that would sustain him here in the U.S. So there was a lot of uphill tasks that he had to deal with, and after all that, he was able to board the ship, and not even a plane, mind you, because he couldn't afford to get on a plane. No one would sponsor him, for his travels by air. So the only other option was for him to get on a boat and to get on the ship and then endure that for 35 long days, with his health conditions and the conditions of the sea, the ocean. It was extremely, extremely painful, right? So here we have Prabhupada landing in the Boston Harbor, and his first prayers are, of total dependence on Krishna, saying that I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge. Oh my Lord, how do I convince these Westerners? And I am completely dependent on you. He says, I'm just like a puppet in your hand. So if you brought me here to dance, make me dance. Make me dance as you like, oh Lord, because I have absolutely no qualification by myself except a strong faith in Lord Krishna. So this was his mode. So I wanted to keep this in the backdrop, and I spent a few minutes on this just because we will be coming back to this towards the end of our discussion today. So some of the key points that I'd like to discuss would be around the Vishwa Bhavana, or the creator of the universe. And who is that? Lord Krishna. And there's no better than Lord Brahma in his prayers when he first appeared on the lotus of the navel of Garbhodakasha Vishnu, where he said, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadhir Adhir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So Anadhir Adhir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. So he is the origin of all. He is the origin of all. And he's talking about Krishna. He's saying that Krishna is the origin. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. So even in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, the Supreme Lord is described as Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram. So there's no one greater than he. There is no question, therefore, that even our scriptures tell us very, very clearly that Lord Krishna is the origin. He's the original. And he is the original creator of all creations. So he is greater than the demigods. He is greater. He is the proprietor of all the planets, and there's nothing that is beyond him. There's nothing that is greater than him. So I think that is a very important fundamental understanding that we all should have with faith, with conviction. In fact, for even putting it in the perspective of some of the scientists who are on this call, there was a very eminent scientist and a cosmologist, an astronomer, an astrophysicist by the name of Carl Sagan. I'm sure you've heard about him, and you've seen his very famous TV series on the cosmos. In his words, even, He said, the size and age of the cosmos are beyond the ordinary human understanding, lost somewhere between the immensity and the eternity is our tiny planet we call home. He went on to say, we live on a hunk of rock and metal that circles that circles a humdrum star, which is our sun, of course. There is one in 400 billion other stars which make up the Milky Way galaxy. Just think about it. So our planet is within the solar system, which goes around the sun. And the sun is just one of 400 other such suns in this galaxy that we call the Milky Way galaxy, which in itself is only one of billions, not millions, but billions with a capital B, of galaxies which make up a universe or an universe, which may be a very large, again, the universe itself is only one amongst billions of universes, maybe even an infinite number of other universes. And in Carl Sagan's terms, this is a perspective of human life and our culture that is well worth pondering. Right? So even for the scientists, it is mind-boggling. Even now, they're realizing that the universe is so vast and so infinitely big that we're only discovering and explored by through exploration and through speculation, little by little by little, that the vastness and the infinity that is involved in terms of this galaxy, with billions and billions and billions of planets and stars that are involved. So these things couldn't have happened all by themselves. They just couldn't have appeared just like that, and have metals and gases and other chemical compounds that just happen by themselves. There had to be a creator behind all of this. And now they're also finding out that previously the thought was that the universe was only expanding. But now that they're finding out that the rate of expansion of the universe is slowing down, which means at some point it will come to a dead stop and then it will start contracting. So mathematically, they're able to now calculate and be able to tell us with conviction that not only is the universe slowing down in terms of its expansion, but at some point in time, that expansion will then reverse itself, and the universe will start contracting to a point where it actually becomes a very dense center of gravity, which is called the black hole, right? So everything is then absorbed back into the black hole completely. Planets, entire solar systems, entire galaxies are completely sucked into this black hole because of the intense gravity. Now you take that same, what the scientists are talking about and relate it to what we're hearing in the Bhagavatam, and which the Bhagavatam has been saying all along. All of the universes are absorbed into the pores of Vishnu, right? At the end of the partial annihilation, at the end of the complete annihilation, all of these universes are going back into the body, into the pores of Mahavishnu. So there is practically no difference. The scientists only now are finding that out. But the Bhagavatam knew it all along and was telling us all along. So the knowledge that we get from the Bhagavatam is basically descending knowledge that we're getting through the scriptures, through sadhu, through our acharyas. And that is what we need to really understand and internalize. So that basically addresses the topic, the discussion that we have. I mean, we definitely can go deeper, but it basically tells us that there is no other than Krishna as the origin, as the original, as the absolute supreme. Everything comes from him. There is no question about that. Now, the other important term is where it is mentioned, he is Suhrit. Suhrit means a well-wisher, right? Not just a friend, but a well-wisher, someone who believes in the well-being and acts for the well-being of others. And Krishna is one such person, right? Where he's constantly, a well-wisher for all of us, for all living entities. It doesn't matter who. For his devotees, more so, but even for the non-devotees, even for the non-believers, you take examples of Hiranyakashipu and others, and even several asuras, which were, that were actually liberated. So Krishna provides for all living entities. It doesn't matter, who we are, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we become inimical towards Krishna, but instead take the favorable position where we are constantly in the shelter of Krishna and serving Krishna, and thereby receiving everything in terms of his blessings and his goodwill through that shelter. So we can do many things by ourselves, but it takes a lot of effort, right? We see that in our day-to-day life. What would and just think about it. The same thing if we do it in a mood of service with Krishna on our sides, it becomes so much easier. The burden is automatically, removed. We don't feel as much of a burden on us. And I'm sure even if you just reflect upon, your recent past, you will be able to recall multiple instances where Krishna has actually played a role in, making things a lot easier. Outcomes can be very different, and again, it depends on our karma, it depends on multiple things. But most importantly, Krishna, like I said, and like the scriptures say, is basically Krishna is doing everything for our best. We may or may not understand now. But at some point in time, when we look back, we're able to connect the dots and we realize that Krishna has done this for a certain reason. He's done that for a certain reason. And when we put all of these things together, we realize how merciful Krishna is. A good example that comes to my mind is when my spiritual master spoke about his vision for a temple in the suburbs of Chicago. We were absolutely excited, but I'll tell you, we were also absolutely clueless because even to raise $3,000 to cover our costs for celebrating Janmashtami here in the suburbs, it was like a humongous task. It was just like lifting a mountain. This was about 20 years ago. Fast forward and you see where we are now. We've raised $2 million in cash for phases 1 and 2 of our temple project. $2 million in cash. Not to talk about the existing land that we already have in the prime real estate of Naperville, which is part of Chicagoland, right by the highway, right by the main road, by Route 59 and so on. So would that have been possible without the mercy of Guru and Krishna? Right? Krishna he's got his hand in there. Sri Radha Shamsundar want to make this happen. They're saying we're enough. We've been lying in these boxes for some time now. We want to come out there, be with you all, be able to bless you all, be able to see you all, and share your joys and sorrows. So we have to make an effort as well, and we need to continue to make that effort together as we make this vision a reality and make the temple a reality, not only for ourselves, but for the community at large. That is the service that we can do as instruments of Krishna, right? And taking that goodwill that Krishna is bestowing on us and being able to spread that joy across the community. So things like these that we tend to take for granted, if we just step back and hit the pause button, and we should be doing that very often, even during the day for that matter, not over a period of days or weeks, but even during the day or at the end of the day, just reflect on all the things that were made so much easier just because Krishna had his hand in it. just because the spiritual master guru had his hand in it, just because the devotees had their hand in it. It's Krishna that is making it all possible through the instruments that he's provided for us. The other important operative term here is anuvritya. Anuvritya, or success, follows one who follows in Krishna's footsteps. Anuvritya is about following in the footsteps. Srila Prabhupada built 108 temples in less than 10 years. Now, can we imitate that? Obviously not. But can we follow that? Yes. Like I said, the example that we're trying to do, by following, we mean not just imitating what Srila Prabhupada did and become Srila Prabhupada ourselves, but instead trying to follow on the principles that he set for us, the principles that Krishna has given us through the various scriptures to be able to do what we need to do. And that's one of the ways in which we're able to come closer together and help build this temple and bring our efforts together in terms of building the temple here in Naperville, right? So what great men do, the common man follows. So yad acharati shreshtas is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3, text 21. So he says, follow but don't imitate. In fact, there's an interesting pastime where Prabhupada, during one of his morning walks, there were several disciples with him, and one of the disciples kept asking the same question in different ways, saying, Lord Ramachandra ate meat. And Prabhupada explained in different ways that, look, Lord Ramachandra was a Kshatriya, and Kshatriyas normally don't eat meat, but even if they do eat meat, is only through meat that is from hunting and or through sacrifices, right? So they're not just indulging in sense gratification as such. But even then, the disciple kept asking Prabhupada, and after a while, Prabhupada responded to him and said, just because Ramchandra ate meat, so I'm also going to be eating meat. So that makes me Ramachandra. So why don't you construct a bridge across the ocean if that is the case, right? Yeah, you want to eat meat, you want to become Ramachandra, and if you can become Ramachandra, can you also construct a bridge across the ocean? So the way Prabhupada would also deal with his disciples in a way that they got the message, right? And our mental makeup is such that some of us absorb it right away, some of us take a longer time to absorb, some of us need a lot more convincing and through different examples, and some of us need a harsh, here's how it is done, follow it. And Prabhupada was an expert in dealing with those kinds of situations as well. I will also read a small passage from the Krishna book, which is important for us because it talks about how Krishna himself set an example in terms of what family life is and how we should follow that. So here it goes. As an ideal householder, Krishna, he lived with his wives and performed the Vedic rituals just to show less intelligent persons that the Supreme Lord is never impersonal. Krishna lived with wives and children in all opulence, exactly like an ordinary conditioned soul, just to teach these souls, or teach those souls who are actually conditioned that they must enter into the family circle of Krishna, where he is the center. For example, the members of the Yadu dynasty lived in the family of Krishna, and Krishna was the center of all their activities. Following in the footsteps of Lord Sri Krishna, one can live with his family members or within the society or nation, not for the purposes of indulging in sense gratification, but to realize Krishna by advancing in attachment for him. There are 4 principles of elevation from conditioned life to a life of liberation, which are technically known as dharma, artha, kama, and moksha: religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. If one lives a family life following in the footsteps of Lord Krishna's family members, one can achieve all four of these principles of success simultaneously by making Krishna the center of all activities. So very clearly, Krishna is setting the right example for us and making it easier for us to follow in his footsteps. And one way to look at it is, even dealing with our family life. And you take that and you apply it in our work, you apply it, in our dealings with our fellow devotees, with our friends, with our family, and so on. Now, another way to look at it is, following the footsteps is also, it means taking the shelter of his lotus feet. Because Krishna provides everything through his blessings or mercy, so whether it's material or spiritual or both. The demigods, the devatas, can only provide us with material benedictions. But in terms of spiritual benefits, true spiritual benefits, Krishna is the only one who can do that. The issue with the material benedictions, again, people ask for good health, ask for wealth, ask for a good wife, things like that, which people do. And they do go to various demigods. There are assigned demigods for each and every one of those kinds of benedictions. The issue is we don't know what we are asking for. We don't know. Truly, we don't know what we're asking for and what the implications are, more importantly, of even receiving those. Right? So when the benedictions do happen, we do get entangled even more. So the benefits of material benedictions are nullified, so to speak. There was a story where a family, husband and wife and a child, they pleased Narada Muni very much. And so Narada Muni, knowing where they were coming from, asked them, what is it that you want? I will give you a benediction. And so the head of the family, the man, asked for being promoted to the higher planets. He said, I would like to go to Swargaloka. And so Narada Muni said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll take you to the Swargaloka. So the man was promoted to the higher planets and disappeared from the family, of course. So the wife was in distress. And so so Narada Muni asked the wife, he said, you look pretty distressed. What is it that you need? Please ask me and I will make it happen. And she said, Narada Muni, I'm very attached to my husband and my duty is to serve my husband. My husband is here, so I cannot live without him. So Narada Muni said, okay, so what do you want me to do? She said, can you please promote me? Can you also take me to where he is? And so lo and behold, she was also promoted to the higher planet. That left the son behind. The son, obviously, without his parents, was completely lost. And so Narada Muni noticed that and asked him, son, what can I do for you? He said, I cannot live without my parents. It's impossible. So please take care of me. Can you please bring my parents back so that I have them here with me so that I can live my life? So Narada Muni said, so be it, and brought the parents back from Swargaloka back to earth. And so, in effect, it nullified what they had asked for. And so that was one example. We all ask in different ways. We all ask ask for different things. So there are some examples where there are good things that we ask for. There are examples that are bad things that we ask for without knowing, and sometimes even knowingly we do that. Take the example of Duryodhana. Duryodhana, instead of asking, once he pleased Durvasa Muni, and you've all heard about this, but I'm just trying to put things in perspective here. Durvasa Muni once, when he was visiting Duryodhana, Duryodhana took such good care of him that Durvasa, who was very easily pleased, but at the same time very easily angered, very, very easily angered, right? He was very pleased at that time with Duryodhana's services and said, Duryodhana, you've really pleased me, ask me for whatever you want. And Duryodhana, instead of asking something for himself, and even if he did ask something for himself, I'm sure it would have been something along the material lines, right? He was so hell bent on hurting the Pandavas that he asked Durvasa Muni to go and visit the Pandavas who were in exile at that point in time and ask to be treated with prasadam at that point. And Durvasa Muni, normally when he traveled from place to place, he traveled with all his disciples. The number is not clear, but I've heard different numbers, anywhere from 10,000 to 60,000 disciples. So he had a huge number of disciples that he would, an entourage that he would take with him from place to place. So Duryodhana was calculating all of this mentally, and he said, I'm going to get the Pandavas this time. Durvasa Muni is going to arrive right after the Pandavas have just finished their morning meal, and with all of Durvasa Muni's disciples, and let's see what happens. They're going to get into trouble because Durvasa Muni has a very short temper, a short fuse, and he's going to curse them, and it's just that was the kind of blessing that Duryodhana was looking for. Not a blessing for himself or others, but instead a curse for the Pandavas. Sure enough, Durvasa Muni goes to the hermitage of the Pandavas, and there they had just finished. The Akshaya Patra was empty. But then, through, a long story short, there again, Lord Krishna helps the Pandavas and consumes that one single morsel that is left behind on the plate. And by eating that, he is so pleased that he's able to completely satisfy Durvasa Muni and all his thousands of disciples as they were having a bath in preparation to come and have the meal. And they were so full that literally were embarrassed to think that if we go now with such full stomachs that are all the way up to our throats, we're not going to be able to do any justice to the Pandavas when we arrive there for the meal that they may have prepared. And so Durvasa Muni just took his disciples and made an exit then and there from the river away from the Pandavas. So these are the ways in which people can ask for blessings, people can ask for benedictions, and then you think about Bali Maharaj on the just to contrast it with some of the things that we're discussing today. Bali Maharaj and Vamana Dev. I mean, Bali Maharaj, in spite of his spiritual master Sukracharya's warnings and caution, that Vamanadev was no ordinary being, he was no ordinary boy. Bali Maharaj was willing to give everything, and all he asked for in return was service to the Lord. Even though he was bound in chains, even though he had completely given up the three planets, the three universes or the three worlds to the Lord, he was still in a very, very service mode where he wanted to offer himself and everything he had on him and service to the Lord. So what did the Lord do? The Lord's reciprocation was Bali Maharaj became the king of one of the lower planets where the Lord himself offered to stand as the Dwarapalaka, in other words, as the gatekeeper outside of the palace of Bali Maharaj. So blessings that benedictions that we ask for with the right attitude, with the right service mode is very, very, very important. And again, Krishna can award anything to anyone. It can be not just material. So why ask for something just material, right? Even if we ask for something, let's ask for something that is more eternal. And what could be better than asking for service? Service where we can do it, with the best of our abilities, in the best of our capacity. Because we face it, we all have, our own health conditions. We have priorities that are constantly taking our mind share day in and day out. There are multiple things that are happening in our lives which keep us from even performing our services. So even if we want to perform our services, even if that intent is there, that sankalp is there, we are not able to carry out our services to the best of our abilities for all the various reasons. And some of these are even valid reasons, right? Whether it is work, family, whatever it is. So our prayers to Krishna should be one of Krishna, give me not only the service, but give me the capability to perform that service, but also the capacity to perform that service. Whether it is health, whether it is time, whether it is wealth, whatever is required for me to be able to perform that service is very, very important. That should be our prayerful mode. In other words, that should be our prayer to Krishna. So we don't need to worship any other deity. Just following in the footsteps of our acharyas, and praying to them and praying to Krishna to make this happen through that descending mercy, it just becomes possible. It becomes possible. And we have many, many, many examples in the scriptures. And I'm sure in your own personal life, you can also recall a lot of these instances where Krishna has made it happen. I mean, it's absolutely no doubt that only through Krishna's hand in it, it worked. I just want to do a quick time check. We have about roughly 19 minutes or so. I will end with one quick thing, which is when you put all of this, and then we'll have some discussion. So when you look at all of this, putting it all in summary, my takeaway here is that we have to welcome Krishna not only into our temple, our new temple, so that we can install Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, but our homes, and not only our homes, but more importantly, into our hearts. So when you see the denizens, the residents of Dwaraka receiving Krishna into Dwaraka, it is symbolic of not just receiving Krishna from his return. I mean, upon his return, but it is more importantly receiving Krishna into their hearts. And taking that whole concept of not imitating but following, anuvritya, is how do we imbibe that same feeling, that genuine feeling, that sincere feeling of inviting Krishna into our hearts? Empathetically putting ourselves in the shoes of those residents who are offering whatever they had. And it was not big things. Some were offering, wonderful prayers. Some were offering wonderful words. Some were offering fruits. Some were offering whatever they had with them. And again, it didn't have to be something huge or big. It was whatever little they had and whatever they could offer, they were offering it with very open hearts. So it's not just offering for the sake of offering, but offering it with a sense of openness, opening our hearts. I mean, I can speak for myself. I mean, it becomes difficult sometimes with all the conditioning that I have to be able to open my heart and receive Krishna in. And Krishna is looking for that openness. When Sudama appeared or arrived at the gates of the palace, see how Krishna reciprocated, to talk about how we can follow in the footsteps of Krishna, and talk about how Krishna is showing us by his own example as to how one should receive your fellow devotees, for instance, and more importantly, for us to be able to receive Krishna in turn. Krishna was in his palace in Dwaraka, and he was being served by all his maidservants, and most importantly by Lakshmi herself, right? In the form of Satyabhama and his other wives. But the moment he heard that Sudama was at the gates of the palace, he just dropped everything and just came running down, made his way all the way down through, several scores of steps, all the way to the gates of the palace, received Sudama and took him back up, all the way back up to where he was, into the heart of the palace, into the inner chambers of the palace, where he took such good care of Sudama, washed his feet, and and inquired genuinely about his well-being, about his family, and about what he was doing, with so much love, with tears in his eyes. So one of my favorite pastimes. I mean, it just melts anybody's heart, for that matter, right? When you hear this, and Sudama was of no consequence. I mean, he had a position of no consequence. He was extremely poor and extremely poverty-stricken. He didn't even have anything that he could really offer. His wife had to borrow from their neighbor to come back with some chipped rice. And so Sudama's clothes were torn, that even the pocket in which he was carrying the chipped rice was half gone by the time he arrived at the palace of Lord Krishna. And even that Krishna, jumped into it out of love and affection. And he takes a few of those chipped rice and he puts it in his mouth, and he's so satisfied. He's so happy. He was not looking for anything big, and Sudama had absolutely nothing to give him, really, that he could call his own. He was so embarrassed, he was shaking to even be there, although they grew up as friends and they were classmates, right, when they were growing up. But even then, he felt, this is the king of Dwaraka, who has all the opulences. And here I am, I'm a poor man with torn clothes. I have nothing to offer him, my friend. How I don't even have the stature to be able to stand here in front of the king. But Krishna didn't care for any of those designations. So, similarly, the way with which Krishna opened his heart is the way in which we should be opening our hearts to Krishna and welcoming him. And this is the way, even as we're reading this verse, we see how the residents of Dwaraka are opening their hearts. They're so happy to see Krishna, and they're receiving Krishna with open hearts. So for me, the takeaway, when you put all of these things together, that there's no one bigger, better than Krishna. He is the greatest. He is the supreme being. He is the original creator. He is the origin of everything in this creation. And when you think about following in the footsteps of Krishna, following on in the footsteps of our acharyas, and being able to do everything we can in the service of Krishna, is the only way we can take the shelter of Krishna. And we can do that really, really, really well and really right by opening our hearts. So there has to be a transformation of our hearts. So that is a topic in itself, which is obviously, it's going to take a lot more time, and our Srila Prabhupada and all his disciples have been, trying to inculcate and nurture in us over the last several decades, right? In terms of the transformation of heart that needs to happen, which is also going to be covered in greater detail in the second canto. But it's very, very important for us to be able to create that space where we can actually invite Krishna into our hearts, which means we have to really work on ourselves in terms of things that we need to do, the qualities that we need to improve upon and bring about, and soften our hearts and be, true to ourselves in terms of what we are and where we should be based on sadhu and scripture, right? Sadhu, Sangha, and Shastra, and be able to actually create an atmosphere, an environment where we are actually grateful to Krishna, right? That feeling of gratitude. And that gratitude is something that we have to practice. We have such a beautiful environment where we are all together here. How do we practice those qualities? How do we exchange those qualities? And obviously, it is a journey for all of us. Not all of us are up there. But this is a great time, and it is a great environment for us to be able to practice that. And thank you to Srila Prabhupada for making this happen, where he's created such a wonderful institution for all of us to be able to share our qualities and actually improve upon ourselves. We will fall multiple times. We will, our natural core qualities are going to come out every now and then, which is okay. but we also need to do something about it. We need to also try and rectify, understand that this was the wrong thing to do. We need to improve on ourselves and get to a point where we actually genuinely work with each other and bring ourselves up. And that's why I was saying this is a year where we really should be holding our hands even tighter as we make progress through in our spiritual journeys, so that we can build on those qualities that we need to have, that will at least get us to a point where we can say, Krishna, please come into our hearts, open the doors to our heart, where Krishna can at least peek in and see, okay, let's see, how clean is it. In my case, it's going to be so dirty, he's going to say, not for another, million lifetimes. But at least we are opening our hearts, we're making that attempt. And Krishna is not just standing there with a stick and saying, no, it's not going to happen. But instead, he's going to say, no, I'm here to help you, right? As a well-wisher. He's here to help us. So let's not be shy about it, but let's also be sincere about it in terms of our commitment. Let's try to nurture that feeling of gratitude so that we can soften our hearts, we can open our hearts and create that environment where we can actually help each other out in allowing Krishna into our hearts. So, going back to the backdrop that I initially mentioned about Srila Prabhupada's arrival on the docks of Boston Harbor back in 1965, his prayers. He could have prayed for anything else. In fact, he didn't even have to come all the way. He was happy in Vrindavan. He was getting old. He could have given up his life there in Vrindavan, like most other sannyasis did at that point in time. And it is still recommended to give up your life in Vrindavan. So Srila Prabhupada didn't have any need to, actually come over here to the United States. But he wanted to do good in terms of his gratefulness, his gratitude for his spiritual master, in terms of his commitment, in terms of his determination. He wanted to serve the Lord. He wanted to serve his spiritual master. And so he was here. And his prayers were one of receiving Krishna, depending entirely on Krishna. For the humongous task, the Herculean task that he had ahead of him in being able to come to the West and actually bring the message of Krishna to the West. So I would like to end there at this point and see if we have about 8 minutes, see if there's any discussion. Actually, each of these topics, I just barely scratched the surface because each of these topics are so deep and require so much more introspection, so much more discussion. There are so many references from the scriptures. There are so many examples that we can go through. So we can go on for weeks and weeks and weeks on each and every one of these topics. So my apologies. I was barely able to scratch the surface, and I may or may not have articulated and got the ideas out. The things that are sitting in my head, but being able to articulate that and make sense to you, I'm not sure if I was able to do it. But let's have some discussions. Let's see if there are any questions, and we can take it from there.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. I want to be the first today and say a big thank you. Thank you so much. The working on the heart. Yes, it is so. I mean, you try to melt. I'm sure all our hearts are melted by the time you really, I mean, it was so touching the way you put it. Yes, it's a matter of opening.
Sandhya Mataji, it's only, with encouragement, devotees like yourself who are so sincere, we are inspired and we're able to do whatever little we can do. So I thank you. Thank you for the encouragement.
I mean,
over the years, you've been steady and you've always inspired me, always inspired me. So thank you very much for that.
It brought tears in my eyes. I'm so touched and in this new year. And as you said, the capacity and the capability to carry out what we have committed. As I am becoming really senior and being challenged by, my energies are little very
Yeah.
become feeling less and less, and it's a big challenge. But thank you for that to develop that dependence on Krishna, and to remember our commitment to Guru and the spiritual master, and to keep maintain that attitude always. That is itself very. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So, a couple of things that come to my mind, Mataji, in response to what you just said. One is, how do we maintain that intensity? How do we? And I think that question came up even a day or two back, during one of our discussions that we've had here on the Srimad Bhagavatam class. So I remember asking this question of my Guru Maharaj. And one is that initial excitement as we first got on board and we were learning so much about Krishna consciousness, being able to go to Gita Nagari, being able to participate in various devotional activities. It was like phenomenal. I mean, even Sedu Mataji, for your daughter's beautiful Arangetram, as we were cooking in Oswego, the task of having to cook for, I think it was 200 or 300 people, I forget the number, but it was a big
It
number.
was 500, Prabhuji. It was 500.
500, exactly. And it was something that we've never even attempted before, right? And we were a handful of devotees in the Oswego congregation. And I could literally count all the names, recall all the names. It was just about 15 of us trying to do what we did, cooking for 500 people, which we had never done before with small utensils that we had. So we had to do it in several batches and so on. And then we had to get a U-Haul truck, and I personally drove that truck over, with all the prasadam to where you were,
I
and
remember
barely
very.
made it on time. And I remember that Sridhar and everybody, there was a whole reception committee waiting there because I was several minutes late. I was held up by the police. The truck had it started malfunctioning, and I think one of the exhaust pipes had actually broken off and fell on the ground, and it was dragging itself and creating all these sparks. So there were people honking from all sides, and I was trying to find my way to where the Arangetram was, just to make sure that we could get the prasadam there on time. So that was an experience. I mean, we came all the way from there, and that intensity of serving was so strong at that point in time. And over the years, obviously, so many things do happen, and constraints do build in. There are a lot of excuses, but the reality is that level of intensity does get impacted over a period of time. So if you were to draw a graph, right, it kind of plateaus out. So the question is that came out in one of the discussions was also, how do you maintain that intensity, which you also brought up today. And when I asked this question, Maharaj he said, there are two things that you need to do. One is you should chant regularly and very carefully. He said it's very important that when we chant very attentively. Careful chanting is key, not just mechanical chanting. And the second part is constant hearing. These two things, if we do it right, with an open mind and an open heart, then that intensity will be there. Agreed. We have physical, constraints that we have to deal with. We're not as young as we were 20 years ago, or even a year ago, for that matter, right? And once you turn 50, that magical number, everything seems to be hitting us in our faces. You wake up in the morning, your body has this ache and that ache. You're not able to do half the things, and it amazes me when I see, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, including our spiritual master, who are running from pillar to post, doing one, two, three, four classes sometimes in a day, and every single day over a sustained period of time. I mean, it's just amazing at their age they're able to, really put everything aside and be able to serve their spiritual master and Krishna with so much intensity. It's just mind-boggling. I cannot imagine how they're doing it at the age of 70 and above, right? Take Jai Patak Maharaj, take Radhanath Maharaj. I mean, take all of the various disciples who are doing this, for their spiritual master. It's just mind-boggling. So we're not getting any younger. So for those of you who are below that magical 50 mark, this is a great time for you to extend and invest in your energies in the right place, so that when you get to 50, at least you can look back and say, look, I did something. Now I can cruise a little bit, but I can continue doing it. So at least it gives you that strength, and by that time, Krishna, God willing, will give us enough strength and energy to be able to continue with the same intensity going forward. So
Thank you
thank you,
again.
Sandhya.
Thank you again, Prabhu. And then it was very sweet. You recalled about that prasadam distribution that day. Thank you. Again, I want to say thank you now also, though it was 13 years ago. Thank you.
Wow.
Hare Krishna.
Amazing.
Personally took charge of delivering it there in College of DuPage.
It was everybody who put, the effort. Nityananda Pran Prabhu, Hemang, everybody. I mean, just about everybody who was there. It was fun. We had a lot of fun doing it together.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any discussion? I'm sure there were a lot of questions in your mind. Please don't feel shy. I'm not going to bite you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhu. No questions, just reiterating what Sandhya Mataji said. It's really heart-touching. When you described this Sudama's pastime, I was also thinking about, Gopakumar's pastime. It's just so heart-melting, particularly, I mean, for me, I keep complaining, okay, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. It's, so much time that complaining more to Krishna. I'm trying to do so much, but you see, you're not doing anything. It goes into that kind of a attitude. But hearing this, it really touched the heart. And, it literally brought tears, as Sandhya Mataji was saying, how, when we shift our focus and see what are all the ways Krishna is actually helping. I may be complaining this one or two things that are not going as I have wanted to or as I planned to. But there are these 99 things that even though I don't know what's the best, but Krishna is there. He's guiding at every step. He's making sure I'm on the right track with the Devotees Association, Bhagavatam and Holy Names. So that was really heart-touching. And you quoted Srila Prabhupada's arrival. That was another thing. The whole class is so beautiful discussion. And I'm just appreciating Dwaraka vasis. Yesterday's verse, they were talking, Krishna is like, high up there. He's the supreme, and they're just starting their prayers, acknowledging his position. And today's verse, okay, if I think, okay, he's up there and he's so supreme, okay, fine, let him be, but what do I have to do with him, right? But today's verse, they're revealing their personal relationship. Even though you are that greatest, you are so close to me, that father, mother, guru, and such a well-wishing friend. That was, that was really sweet to think of how he is that well-wishing friend, so close. I mean, mother, father, guru are a little bit far. Like we can't share, what are all the things going on, the struggles, everything. But this well-wishing friend, it really brought that relationship into perspective. And it was really beautiful. I mean, so many points. And the other thing you brought about this discussion between imitation and the following. That was something I always struggle hearing it again and again. It's kind of putting that thing a little bit into clarity, how that following is important. Sometimes I feel I may be imitating, so let me not even follow. I go to that extreme. So this discussion really helped. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's always a very heart-touching and very enlivening to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. It breaks my heart when I hear about Prabhupada's efforts, in terms of making it here to the US. Like I said, he didn't have left Vrindavan at all, right? Everybody agrees. But in spite of all the difficulties he had, he was completely out of money. His business went down. Everything went wrong, right? At one point in time, it was like Krishna had literally taken everything away from him. But when you connect the dots, we realize, it was done for the right reasons, right? And Prabhupada didn't lose even an ounce of faith in Krishna. Right, even as he went through, there were days when he would even go without eating just to distribute books on the streets. I mean, it was just mind-boggling, right? So even after all that, he finally got his visa. He finally got a firm date in terms of when the ship was going to be leaving the port. It was August 13th that and this was in June, the end of June, that he had actually received all of the paperwork, the approvals, the visa, and all of that. So he still had some time left, right? And to be able to, and I think there was one other thing that he had to complete, and therefore he had to go to Calcutta. He had to go to Calcutta. While he got that done before he was able to, oh yeah, the ship was leaving from Calcutta on August 13th. So when he went back to Calcutta, and Calcutta was his hometown, but he didn't have a place to live. Can you imagine? His family had completely abandoned him. In fact, Prabhupada's words were, all I have is a list of names that were once my family. Those were his words. It's like heart-wrenching. I mean, here was Prabhupada, such a highly elevated individual, and his entire family, his wife, his children, his grandchildren, no one was there to even take care of him, even for those few weeks that he had to spend before he boarded, the ship in Calcutta. He literally had to find places to be able to live, stay in before he could actually board the ship. So, in spite of that, he never lost faith. In spite of all that, we tend to also, focus on the constraints that we have to a point that becomes our biggest impediment. I think we need to get out of that mindset and say, we recognize we do have these body aches and these constraints that we have in terms of time and all, but what can we do to continue to serve and engage in service, right? So I think our focus should be more on that. Unfortunately, I can speak for myself. Mentally, I tend to put more effort in terms of focusing on my constraints, my impediments, as opposed to thinking about, how can I overcome that, and instead channel my energies in terms of being able to engage myself in service. And again, services can, I think it was Gadadhar Chandra Prabhu yesterday or day before who mentioned that we tend to become picky about the kinds of services that we take on. Some of that is also because of the constraints that we have. But if it's coming from proper authorities, from sincere devotees, whatever that service is, taking that up, it should be our primary goal, our priority, I would say. And keeping that in mind, and then also being able to contribute where we are really good in terms of, we all have different kinds of capabilities, and we all can do it in various capacities. But if we can also do that, in addition to the services that are given to us, but also offer ourselves up in terms of being able to perform those services that would help others, I think that would also be a great service. Bringing all of this together in itself, I think with the right attitude, with the right sense of humility and gratitude that we're talking about, I think we'll be able to achieve wonders, in Krishna service, even here in April. So thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Just want to add one thing as you were sharing about Srila Prabhupada. If there is anyone on the call, either hearing now or later on YouTube, I would like to heartfully request them to take a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrit and then read through. I mean, it's such a heart-wrenching journey, just seeing what all Prabhupada has to go through to give us what he has given us. You have really shared those glimpses for us to be motivated and go back and read. I can really tell that something which has propelled me and which has really given me something to understand the value of this gift, what we have received. So that's my request to all the devotees who didn't get a chance to read the Lilamrit yet. Please go to that and have that connection to Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. And once again, while you're thinking of other questions to ask, humble request on behalf of everyone that's working so hard to make this temple happen. Please, please, please contribute in whatever way you can. This is not for you or me, but it's for Krishna. It's for Guru and Krishna that we're doing. So whatever way you can contribute, whether it is through your words, your services, your wealth, whatever it is, please, please don't keep anything back. You're doing it for Krishna. It will come back multiple fold in various ways from Krishna, as you know. So I don't even have to say it. So please take this. This is the time when we actually need your help. Otherwise, for the last several years, we've never gone and explicitly asked anyone to step up or step forward. But as you're seeing, we are gaining a lot of momentum. There's a lot of hard work that's being put in by several of you devotees. I see Damodar Leela Prabhu here, and I see several others, who are putting in so much of their time and effort in terms of making this happen. So please, let's use this as an opportunity for ourselves as well to serve the Lord. So please don't hesitate. This is the year which we should make it happen. Any other questions? Any discussion, comments? If not, I know I've gone about 11 minutes over. So Lingaraj Prabhu, I will hand it over to you to see if there are any further questions. Else we can hit the pause button until tomorrow. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaः.